Mr. Darcy is the guy that everyone is always talking about. And I don't think that I completely understand what the thing is about him that everyone seems to be so obsessed with. Welcome to the table.
We're your hosts, Michelle and Laura.
This is where we talk movies, food, and the ways that they bring us together. Grab a seat. This episode starts now.
Ciao. Our Regency season is continuing. I personally don't know any background for you about this movie, so I would love to hear. Was this your first time watching, your fifth? How familiar are you with the story?
This was my third time watching it.
Okay.
The first time was after I had read that book called Eligible, which was a modern retelling of this story. And that kind of opened the gates for me to explore many of the Regency films that we're covering in this series. And then this is special. Last year, friend Brooke asked if I wanted to go see this in the theater. They had re-released it. Last year was the 20th anniversary. It was a way more rich experience than watching it even on our nice 2025, 2026 TVs. And then just rewatched it for this. So still feel very new to this, to the Jane Austen Regency world. Still a
Yes.
newbie.
Oh, I'm so happy you got to see this in the movies. I wish that we could see everything that's ever come out in the movies.
How about you? Was this your first time watching it, or had you seen parts of
So
it
it was
before?
my first and a half
Okay.
because I started watching it. I watched it last year when they did, I guess, the re-release, and there was just a lot of buzz about this movie. I think it was all over my Instagram feed, so I was very influenced, and I wanted to see what it was all about. And I think I started it and I fell asleep, as one does. Not because it was boring. I think it just picked the wrong time to watch it, and then I didn't return to it. So this was like my full time watching it through, although I did watch it in two parts in true Laura fashion. I did have a chair this time that I sat and watched it in, and I still fell asleep the first time sitting up. But I really enjoyed it. I wish that I could have seen it in the movies because with all of these films that we're covering this season, there's so many beautiful shots, and just to be able to like see it on a big screen, I think would have been a little bit more enjoyable, but I still very much loved it.
All right, before we move into the what do we love, I think the one last tent pole that we need to mention as far as our history with this movie goes is You've Got Mail, because every time I hear anything about Pride and Prejudice, that's where my mind goes first, is to just hear Tom Hanks's fantastic monologue about like, I bet you just love that Mr. Darcy. I love this storyline that he does kind of like make himself read the book, but he hasn't completely retained the plot. And then he's like, was it that Mr. Darcy was too prideful, or was he too prejudiced?
Oh, I completely forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. This is also a nod back if you're new to the podcast and you haven't listened to You've Got Mail, one of our early films that we've covered, and a favorite of both Michelle and I. So
Yes, we were on a good streak of trying to name drop Tom Hanks in every episode we recorded, and I don't think he's made an appearance in a while, so it was time.
we're moving on to Kira. We've moved away from Tom. So
We're in our Kira era.
So let's get into it. What did you like from this movie?
This is something that we kind of talked about in the first episode of this series when we talked about Sense and Sensibility, was just kind of this idea of that story and this story being about sisters. And for the new listeners, Laura and I are the bookends of a family of four girls. And Little Women was always such a central story in our family. But I felt like this story, more than Sense and Sensibility, really reminded me of our family and brought me back. And truly, like, I was tearing up in that first scene when well, I guess it's not the first scene, but the first scene where we see their house
Mm.
and they're kind of just like, oh, the camera work, I'm gonna cry again because like, the
Yeah.
camera work is just so
Mm.
gorgeous, but
Mm.
the way that the camera moves in, before we even meet this family, we're seeing what their life looks like,
Mhm.
and I just kept thinking, like, "This could have been us,"
Yeah.
and again, talking about how Jane Austen, I don't know that even know that she knew that she was doing this, but
Mhm.
really was able to capture humanity in a way that even though this took place hundreds of years ago, like this is still really what our family and our home felt like, especially
Yeah.
during these years when we were all kind of like, older, but all still living together.
Yeah. No, I really felt the same, and I will think about it. It's like, it's crazy. Imagine we were living during this time and there's this pressure of, like, one person to marry so that the money is passed along to some. It's like and trying to hold on to the innocence of just, like, a sister bond and a family bond. I think in particular, the core relationship I really think is between Jane and Lizzie. We spend, like, the most time with them. They're the ones that are really, again, kind of faced with, like, this time in their life where they're supposed to marry and leave the home. And the younger girls are a little bit more in the background, like giggling a lot and not fully understanding like the gravity of everything else. And I think that's a really accurate depiction of even probably how you felt, not in this exact scenario, but I think like growing up in a house with all girls, being in a completely different stage of your life while the younger ones are still have a lot of innocence. So I think we have a lot of these really more intense conversations between Jane and Lizzie, and also really sweet conversations between the two of them and comparing their feelings. Just another sweet addition to this season of also coming off of Sense and Sensibility and having that with some of the older sister characters.
I guess we see this in Sense and Sensibility, but I think I just like felt it more because when I think of period films, I feel like we see a lot of like really rich, fancy people, and then we see a lot of like, kind of like dirt poor living on the streets people, but
Yeah.
we don't see a ton of this kind of middle class, if you will. And
Middle
I
class with their gigantic brick home.
it is, but I
Yeah.
mean, at least
I
the
know
way
of the
that
time.
they describe their financial situation or class, they're not super well off. They're just kind of
Mhm.
like this average English family. The way that they dress, but also the way that they act. I love the scenes where they're sitting at the table. This is another thing just made me think of our family. It's very chaotic.
But it really gives us a peek into what the morning was like with everyone.
Everyone is very themselves. They're
Mhm.
not super polished. The way that they eat is not super polished.
I like that you brought up their mannerisms because that's one thing that I noticed even in comparison to Sense and Sensibility, where they're not as poised. I think when they're meeting people for the first time, they feel like they have their guard down and they're not trying to be very prim and proper aside from maybe greeting each other with like a bow. But to your point, I think these characters feel a little bit more human.
I mean, I don't know if this kind of comes through in the book, but the way that this approach to showing this family is very much like we're going to let you see them in their everyday state. We're not letting you see them in their like polished state, this is the only movie I can think of from this era where that's the case.
I agree. But then we also get to see them be excited to go to balls and like do their hair really nicely, which again just feels very human that like you're going to a special occasion, you're going to get ready with your sisters, you're going to dress up and you're going to go somewhere. So I think they did a really good job of that. And big question that's really looming over everyone's head in the house is like, who is going to be the one to get married? And it has to be someone. And we don't care who it is, but it's got to be one of you. And it's very clear from the beginning that Lizzie does not want it to be her. I mean, she is open and curious, and from the moment that she meets Mr. Darcy, there is this element of like, "Who is this guy? I'm kind of interested, okay." But I think there's this, like, nudge that she has towards her older sister of like, "You got it." And but it's not but sh the way I think there's all these tiny decisions, right, of, like, how this character is written and then how Keira Knightley portrays her. It doesn't come off to me in a malicious way, but I think underneath, I do think that that is part of her intentions of being like, "I don't wanna be the one to have to do it."
Ah, I feel like now that you're saying that, it seems so obvious, but I don't even think that I really completely understood that, and I think
Mhm,
that it's also maybe this is now kind of like my the modern woman putting
mhm,
this thought on her, but I'm wondering if it's also kind of a frustration and rebellion against that this is even the way that things are. Like, why do things
mhm.
have to be like this? That our family that only has girls in it, that we're stuck in this situation, that the only way that we can truly survive in this world is for one of us to get married. And like, how annoying is that?
Yeah. I think there's both sides of that coin. I think it comes off really well in Lizzie's character.
Okay, so I felt like the way that I interpreted it before you just said this was that the way that they portrayed Jane was very passive. I mean, this is another character that I felt like I
Yeah.
related to so much. Very passive, very like, it's going to be fine. I love that they have that line. Elizabeth says this about Jane. She says, like, she's my own sister and like she barely tells me anything. Like, I think that
Mhm.
Jane does a good
Yeah.
job of kind of like keeping things, including her feelings, under wraps. And I thought it was kind of this like, okay, here's this guy, Mr. Bingley, like maybe not greatest guy in the world gonna save the world, but clearly like a nice just he's just like a nice guy.
Mhm.
And I thought that she saw that situation as, okay, my sister's a nice girl, this is a nice guy, and we need to fix this. So like this feels like an obvious choice. Like let's just make this happen and get on with our lives.
Yeah.
But I love this kind of complexity of maybe that's true, but also Elizabeth does not she's next in line or like kind of it doesn't have to go in in age order, but even I mean, we see in the scene with Mr. Collins, she has to step up to the plate. Her parents are kind of like pushing her into this expectation that if it's not going to be Jane, it's going to have to be Elizabeth, and she's just like, I don't want to do this.
Mhm. But I like the pace of the movie that they made these decisions because the moment that Jane and Mr. Bingley are, like, really hitting it off and they're spending all this time together, like, my thought was because I'd never seen the full movie, "Oh, okay, like, something's gonna go wrong because everything's flowing too quickly, and there has to be this, like, grand pause that has to make them rethink, like, who's gonna be the person," but it kind of felt like a game in a way. It's like, "Oh my god, which sister is it gonna be?" And then they end up completely flipping it that it's neither of them to be the first one to get married, which I just thought was, like, a very engaging decision.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with every episode, we're like, wow, Jane Austen, that writer, she really did a great job with
That
these
Jane Austen,
stories.
she's something. People should read her.
This was just another vote for that we really need to plan a trip together to go to the English countryside because
Yes.
this movie is gorgeous. Whether it's day or night or dusk or it's raining or it's dewy, every single scene that is outside. I mean, all the scenes are beautiful, but particularly these exterior scenes are just don't you just want to roll around in the grass?
Yes. I wanna roll around in the grass, in the rain, and I don't care if it's cold. I actually did have this thought this week where I was saying to myself, like, "I think I might just plan another trip to the English countryside by myself or with you and just go and just do it because that's what this season is making us wanna do."
I know that this was a kind of like the beginning of social media, but I hope that the, Department of Tourism for England gave this film money because I feel like you said, I was having a really hard time watching this and just not being distracted by the idea of I have to go to this place. I was feeling
Yes.
so drawn.
I think that we need to rent the Bennet house and we need to go and hang out with the ducks. We do get a lot of the moments like inside these houses, and I think like the set design was really beautiful, but I think I enjoyed the moments like outdoors the most. And I thought that it was a really, I mean, it makes sense that this movie is so well revered because there's a lot of like those experimental like shots throughout the movie. Like we even get that moment where Lizzie is sitting on the swing and all of the seasons are kind of changing and she's almost like watching her life go by. And then we get these really like weird shots of her and Mr. Darcy like peering out at each other and like they catch each other's eye, whether it's in church or when she's visiting his estate as a tour. And then we get this moment of like Lizzie on the cliff, just like longing and thinking about her life. And it's very dramatic.
Again, I'm like, I feel so grateful that I got to see this on the big screen because you really felt those exterior scenes. But the other kind of camera work that I don't even think that I feel like an idiot, but I feel like I didn't really notice the first time or appreciate the first time that I saw it were this thing that they do where they're kind of showing scenes through windows and the
Mm.
camera's kind of like moving from scene to scene and it doesn't break. And I think that that also is another representation of kind of how we were talking about in the beginning of them kind of being at this breakfast table and it being so like loud and chaotic. We're also getting these kind of like intimate moments. The ones that I think were especially beautiful was toward the end and when we're in the Bennet house and you see the parents kind of like talking before they go to bed and then you kind of see Elizabeth and Jane talking, and then you see Mary and Kitty talking.
If you were to scan someone's house full of people, what are the mini conversations that are being had, and how do you kind of just peer in and dance from room to room? Or, but yeah, I think even just like the opening is so powerful, really draws you in with like the score is something that is so beautiful. I think I need to like create a Regency playlist
I'll
at this
share
point.
mine with you. I already have one created, and it's kind of a mix, I think, of all of these movies, and I think I maybe even have some of the other versions and miniseries in there, but when I rewatch this, I recognize so many of the tunes, and I think these are really the most beautiful, and I think it's not in every scene, but in a lot of the scenes where they have music, it's not just a soundtrack, it's truly someone playing the piano or, the orchestra playing at the ball, and it's just another one of these things that I think that this makes this movie feel so real.
She's
I wanted
fabulous.
to talk about how this is the first and only of this series where we're seeing a family with both parents in it because we had Sense and Sensibility where they only had the mom, and then we did Emma where she only had the dad, and then we'll have Wuthering Heights where she only has the dad. So I was very honed in on this relationship between the parents and how that changed the dynamic of the family.
They really make it opposite ends of the coin where the dad is kind of accepting of what the situation is, but he does not encourage the action and kind of is holding on to the family. And it actually made me think of I found this like letter from dad recently when a lot of time when we went on like retreats and then they would write the letter, and it was right before I had went to college, and it was like basically saying, "Don't think that, like, I want you to leave the house." I'm gonna get emotional because he was,
Oh.
like, wanting to, like, hold on to, like, us all being there, and that was probably, like, a big moment to have, like, their youngest, like, leave the house, and now I'm seeing it with my in-laws and, like, my sister-in-law who's gonna be going to college next year, and it really is this, like, big change for parents to
Yeah.
see their kids leave, like, leave the nest, whether it's to college and then they come back, but then they're gone because it's, like, what you know. It's, like, having noise in the house and having, like, chaos and things going on and siblings interacting with each other, so Donald Sutherland did such an amazing job in that role because he was so quiet in how he felt, but you knew everything that he was feeling. He tells us everything that we need to know in his silence and in his just small acts of like interactions with his daughters and like comforting them. And then you have the mom who is an absolute nervous wreck. And I thought was like honestly part of like an honest portrayal. She feels responsible. She's like, I want my daughters to be able to survive in the world and like be taken care of. And like she's taking on all of that. So as much as she like annoys me in certain parts or makes me laugh, I think I sympathize with how she's feeling.
Layered on top of that, I love that we have the mom, unless I'm overlooking someone, we don't really have that kind of Mrs. Jennings or Miss Bates style gossipy character in
Mhm.
this. I think that the mom kind of absorbs some of those characteristics because yes, I think her underlying drive is really more of, like, survival, like, she knows that her daughters literally need to get married or this family is gonna be on the streets, but I think that she is also, like, super gossipy, and even if she had sons, I think that she would still kind of, like, insert herself into situations like this
Oh,
because she just
absolutely.
can't she's, like, so into it. I think that
Very.
she's the quintessential, like, always has her ear to the door, always knows what's going on. And
Uh,
then just contrasting with the dad, you could very easily write a dad character from this time who's very, like, all business and, like, "We need to get this done," kind of more of
mhm.
how the mom is being. But the fact that he has this really, respectful relationship with his daughters and that he really seems to understand them. I think in a time where that kind of wasn't a thing, it was really beautiful to see. And as you said, Donald Sutherland did such a the tone that he brought to this movie was like exactly what it needed to be.
I felt like I would wanted him as my movie dad. I do wanna I know we keep bringing up Sense and Sensibility, we brought it up in last episode as well, but did you find yourself comparing a lot of the storylines and characters with this movie?
Yes. And with Emma to a degree, but I
Yeah.
also us kind of coming into not having read any of these books, still familiarizing one another with, like, these worlds and the characters, and I did find that in watching this, I my brain was trying to make the pieces fit, and even just me saying, like, "Okay, there's no Mrs. Jennings character and there's no Miss
Mhm.
Bates character, so, like, who's fulfilling this, like, gossipy role?" But also, okay, who is this, like who's gonna be the guy who you think is the guy, but is actually a jerk because that kinda seems to be a trend in all of these stories. I was trying not to, but kinda couldn't help myself.
I think especially with Mr. Wickham, I couldn't help but compare him to Mr. Willoughby in Sense and Sensibility, even though they have different, I think, character traits, but they both had that role of, oh, this very like charming man who seems perfect and is probably going to sweep someone off their feet. And then it all crumbles underneath. As a writer, she probably just really liked that storyline, but was able to like create different characters from it and also create a sense of like, oh, well, what did he do? Why is his character painted? And not that this doesn't come through in present day because it does, especially now that like our entire experience is online and we're always like judging each other based on our decisions or the things that we are researching or uncovering about someone. But like someone's reputation is so important in the Regency era.
They were essentially canceling people before canceling people was a
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. I mean, I think that Mr. Wickham I think it was warranted for canceling him because he was not a good person.
I mean, who do you think is worse, Mr. Wickham or Mr. Willoughby? Can we just do a brief recap to make sure that I'm remembering kind of what each of their their
Yeah,
pasts
so
were?
Mr. Willoughby's flaw was that he was known sort of as a womanizer, and he had dated and knocked up Colonel Brandon's essentially, like,
Ward.
adopted his, like, daughter, but it's not hers, it's, like, the woman that he loves' daughter, and basically took advantage of this very, like, young girl and then left her. Where Mr. Wickham's end goal is to end up with someone so that he can be ridiculously wealthy. He just wants to marry rich. So he was apparently almost like an adopted son of Mr. Darcy's father, and they had a good relationship, but when he died, all he was interested in was money, and he also tried to court Georgiana, who is Mr. Darcy's sister, which is a lot of layers because that's, like, also your adopted sister, and she's very young, and when he found out that he wouldn't be getting, like, a dime of the money, then he kindly moved on. So he's a little bit more of a gold digger, whereas Mr. Willoughby, I think, is a little bit more of a womanizer. So what do you think? I kind of think Mr. Wickham because I
Is
think Mr.
better or
Willoughby
worse?
worse.
Mr. Willoughby truly loved Marianne.
I think that he did
I think
really
so too.
fell in love with
I think that
Marianne.
was
Wasn't
genuine.
expecting it, and I think if he hadn't had other ties. Like, he wasn't marrying for money. I think he genuinely enjoyed her company and kind of found his, like, fun match, where Mr. Wickham is just, like, a leech, in my opinion, and you gotta cut that ponytail off. I'm not into it.
In the end of Sense and Sensibility, we have that scene where Mr. Willoughby is, like, on his horse, kind of, like, looking down, and he's feeling so bad for himself, whereas Mr. Wickham kinda got, like, the worst punishment, which is to end up having to be married to Lydia.
Literally the worst. I also really love the interaction that they decided between Mr. Wickham and Lizzie, where they basically do not interact at all during the post marriage dinner. And then as he's leaving, he kind of gives her a nod and she just turns her back on him.
I
And
was
it's,
so happy that we got to see that scene because I was kind of thinking and I couldn't remember, okay, these 2 had, like, a little bit of a history,
yeah,
and now they haven't seen each other. All this shit has happened, and what's gonna happen now when we see them alone together for the first time, and I, like, just love how she handled that. Like, I am not gonna even I feel like to not bow to someone, I feel like everyone is bowing to anyone, whether you like them or not, or
yeah.
no matter what the history is, and she's just like, "No, you're not. I do not see you. You're not there."
Can we talk a little bit about Jane and Mr. Bingley?
Yes,
Because
please.
this is not the central love story in the book, or movie, but I felt so girlish in a way that every time I was in a scene with the 2 of them, I could not stop smiling, and I think they just have this very, like, innocent all these little innocent interactions, and I did have the similar thought as Mr. Darcy that, like, I don't know if she necessarily loves him as much as she's, like, charmed by the idea of him, but I'm really happy that they allowed them to end up together at the end.
Me too. No,
Mm.
I think that we don't get a ton of characters like this just in general that's just like, this is just like a nice guy. It doesn't really have I mean, all of the drama that is around him is coming from other sources. It's not really coming from him. In last week's episode about Emma, we were talking about how much we love Mr. Knightley, especially in comparison to any of the guys from Sense and Sensibility. And now, after examining this film, I still think that Mr. Knightley's my number one because I think that he's just an interesting person and multifaceted. But I think that Mr. Bingley's my number 2.
I don't know if you saw this, but there was another similar connectivity to people who met on set and started dating. So Rosamund Pike and the writer of this movie met on set and then dated. They did not have a long marriage the way that lovely Miss Emma Thompson still does, but it was apparently a very like passionate relationship. And this article came out 3 days ago from People, so it's very timely. I wish.
Wow, okay. That's not what I thought you were gonna say because I uncovered something else about Rosamund Pike. I guess this is our new gossip corner, the
Oh,
Mrs. Jennings
yes.
gossip corner.
We're changing the background section to our gossip corner.
What I had read, and I have remember reading this the last time I watched this movie, that Rosamund Pike used to date the guy who plays Mr.
I guess.
Bingley,
Oh,
Simon
oh,
Woods. So I
ah,
guess they dated for a couple of years, and I think that there was almost a question of would she be okay with playing across from him in these scenes? And then this time I had to go back and remind myself if I was like making that fact up because I was trying to kind of watch the scenes through that lens that they had had a prior relationship, and they're so cute together. But then I did some further research, obviously not far enough because I missed the section of her life where she had a relationship with the writer,
yes.
but she went on to marry someone else and I think has 2 sons, and he went on to marry a man, a cute man, and they
Oh,
have 2 daughters.
oh my
So I felt
goodness.
like th
It all
this
works out.
this is still a very happy love story. Maybe not as, much of a fairy tale as Emma Thompson's was in filming Sense and Sensibility, but reading that made me really happy. And I think he and Jane are perfect for each other, and in a way, I think it worked perfectly because you feel like there is this, like, mutual love and
Mm.
respect and adoration for one another that I think is truly happening both between the characters and the actors playing them.
And there's this perfect moment that Mr. Bennet sums up when they finally get engaged that he says, like, basically, they are exactly the same.
And I love that he says that the servants are gonna take advantage of them, and
Yeah,
it's not gonna matter.
yeah, I know, and
So cute.
it just summed up everything you needed to know about the 2 of them in the
Yeah.
sweetest way. I also think that Mr. Bingley's character was really important to be the juxtaposition to Mr. Darcy because they are complete opposite ends of the coin, and I don't actually think that they would have been portrayed as well without each other.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it was a perfect parallel to Jane and Elizabeth. I mean, I feel
Yeah,
like they kinda have the same dynamic that the sisters have. I think that they do love each other, wanna support one another, want the best for each other, and maybe there's a little bit of complication in there, but for the most part, like, they have each other's backs and they have the right
yeah.
intentions.
So what is your history with Matthew McFadden? Have you seen him in many things?
I don't know him from many things because I think the other big thing that he's known for is Succession?
Succession, mhm, which he
Okay.
is the best part of that show. If you have not watched it, it's a must. He's so good in it, and at a
What
completely different character, but he's amazing.
okay, what kinda character does he play in that, and how does it compare to Mr. Darcy?
He is kind of a huge idiot, but in the best way, like, he is very wealthy, but he doesn't know what he's doing or what he's talking about, but he tries to come off like he does. Every word that comes out of his mouth, you don't even know what he's talking about, but you are fully in and laughing, and he has a really great scene partner who's, like, a cousin of the family, and the 2 of them are, like everyone loves them when you watch the show. I don't know too much about his film history, but I did see him in a pretty serious film and he kinda was like I would say similar role to who he plays in Succession. The name of the movie is escaping me, but it's supposed to kinda be like a Harvey Weinstein, like, depiction, and he, like, works for Harvey Weinstein who kind of, like, pretends like nothing is going on, but he has this like disposition in terms of what he's saying that like he just is such he like denies and like it seems like truth and it's a really interesting character.
Yeah, he's a really interesting actor, and now even more interesting based on you describing those two roles. Because the thing that I just saw him in was a mini series called Death by Lightning. That's about the assassination of President Garfield, and Matthew McFadden plays this guy named Charles Guiteau, who is the
Mhm.
assassin. It was such a interesting watch. I don't know if this was the intention of the filmmakers or the casting, but or the fact that his character clearly has an undiagnosed mental illness, but I found myself going through this whole story because you're really seeing the two sides. You're seeing the president's story and then you're seeing the assassin's story. And I felt so bad for him throughout the whole show. But then I was questioning because he does look very different because it's in a different era than Pride and Prejudice. But I was wondering if like did I feel bad for him in Pride and Prejudice? Like it was just making me question a lot of things, and I still don't really have an answer, and I still don't know how I feel about him, and I don't know how I feel about Mr. Darcy, which I want to get into. But I think it may be because of his portrayal of Mr. Darcy that this is all I have to go by, and I have very mixed feelings.
I don't really know anyone that has his acting style, is what I'll say. He is a very like an individual. I'm with you. I have very mixed feelings about all of it mixed together. Um, should we talk about things we didn't like?
Yes. Okay, well, I'm going to go first because I feel like this is kind of in that in between category of it's not that I hated this, but I think I'm not completely understanding it. So we kind of already talked about Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley's relationship, their friendship, and maybe this is because of You've Got Mail, but I think Mr. Darcy is the character that I knew of from a more of a like a pop culture standpoint. Like I didn't know any of these other Mr. Bingley, Mr. Knightley,
Mhm.
Mr. Colonel Brandon, etc. But Mr. Darcy is the guy that everyone is always talking about. And I don't think that I completely understand what the thing is about him that everyone seems to be so obsessed with. Things that I like about him, I like that he's complex. I get that this is kind of a early version of enemies to lovers dynamic, which is like has become like such a popular thing. But this is where I need your help, Laura. I do not understand where this initial beef is coming from between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth. And the thing that I really don't understand is why he encouraged Mr. Bingley to essentially like break up with Jane.
In my opinion, they don't have beef. I think that their basis of attraction towards each other is that they both go against the grain. So you have these two characters of Jane and Mr. Bingley who are very passive. It works in their favor because they see things, I think, more simply and more beautifully. Where both Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth are rebellious, but also are just like the people in the back of the room who are kind of grumbling and making comments about someone. And they make it so that Elizabeth says like, why are you so like unpleasant? And why are you always like talking negatively about other people? And why are you not being sociable? But I think like she also sees a little bit of that in herself. Jane Austen, when she's writing this, like uses it as a vehicle to form this attraction of being like, oh, well, he's also a little bit unpleasant around other people and is going to do the opposite of what people expect of him. And then they kind of use that throughout the whole movie of being like, well, this is why we can't be together. And this is why we'll never work. And this is why I loathe you, but all of that hatred is actually love underneath, and them being afraid to open up their hearts because they see themselves in this very specific way of like, people who could never could never end up with anyone because Mr. Darcy needs someone who's perfect and checks all of his boxes, and he sets these unrealistic expectations because he's afraid. And Elizabeth is like, well, I don't want to do anything that anyone expects of me. She does kind of have the same unrealistic expectations. Like she built up this idea of who Mr. Wickham is when he's not actually that way. So I think it's less about like understanding their beef and more understanding kind of where they're both coming from and why they like use it as almost like a flirting tactic. They both secretly enjoy it.
All right. I think that that's helpful.
And I think that Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth are in very different circumstances. Mr. Darcy comes from money. He never has to worry about anything. And if anything, Mr. Bingley is almost like the only source of light and happiness in his life. That I think there's this element of like, well, when he gets married, like I'm kind of alone besides having Georgiana. And I think his intention is he does want to see him happy, and he may be like projecting himself in there where it's like you should keep looking and you should find someone who's perfect and checks all these boxes. But I think he also like he can't open up his heart himself, so he knows like when his best friend gets married he wants it to be someone who's up to the level of which he views him. But I think he also is this element of loss and like losing his best friend to a woman.
I guess that makes sense. But what does he tell Elizabeth? He kind of apologizes to her in that letter.
I mean, he tells her that he doesn't think that Jane is in love with Mr. Bingley. And he thinks that she is more like doting on him, but is not actually in love. It's kind of like the idea of them ending up together.
Okay. And
Um,
he does mention the family. Like he kind of brings the mom and the sisters into it. Like he's
yeah.
like, I know that you and Jane aren't like that, but like your mom and your sisters are kind of a problem. So I accept that, but I think having your explanation of maybe having this deeper meaning of both, losing his best friend, but also more treating him like a brother and like really wanting to make sure that he has the best of the best. And
Mhm.
I mean, he doesn't really know Jane enough to know her heart and know that like she is,
Yeah.
a great person. It all felt kind of like vague to me. Like it,
Throne.
it didn't feel
Yeah.
like a clear cut answer.
I completely agree. I think that I don't know if that's the intention, but I also think it's kind of a theme of like the men being portrayed in this time period. Like, yes, I think the attraction with Mr. Darcy is he's like a little bit mysterious and we don't know like really what's going on, but I don't think it's really like an attractive mysteriousness. It's kind of like he's just a grumbly man in the background. A lot of at least the fairy tales that we end up with are like these very like perfect prince charming men who don't have any flaws and no complexity. And then Mr. Darcy is the one who's like, oh, he's a little bit different and he's going to play hard to get. But then he's like also in love with me and he's confusing me.
Yeah, I think it's also I'm comparing it to the kind of the Wickham reveal and
Mhm.
explanation. Like that was very like, okay, we know that there's something that went on between these
Mhm.
two guys in their past, and we don't know what the mystery is. And then he reveals it, and then we learn Mr.
Mhm.
Wickham really has these character flaws. But when he was just giving the explanation for why he broke up Jane and Bingley, I was like, really?
Yeah,
Like
it wasn't a
all of
big
this
reveal.
for like that? Like it just didn't feel as dramatic, I guess, that I
I
was
agree.
expecting for a story.
I'm still confused about when Lydia and Mr. Wickham get married and when they find out that they're engaged and Elizabeth is besides herself and she's in this like romantic setting with him. They're finally like, oh my God, we're getting together. We're seeing each other in this different light. And then he's there to comfort her and is like, this is all my fault. Like, I will help you with the situation. She goes back home. they're already married and they're sitting at the table and Lydia says, "Oh, Mr. Darcy was at the wedding and he actually helped us to get married."
Okay, this is again for the audience.
I'm so
We're
confused.
new here. We don't know what we're talking about, but this was how I understood this. When Elizabeth got that letter and she's like you said, they were kind of setting it up like you think that someone died. Like
Yeah,
that's the level of
that's all that
emotion
is
that
on
we're
tape
getting.
net.
And she even says that like the absolute worst thing that could have happened has
Yeah.
happened. And I think what actually happened was they didn't get engaged. I think that they talk about this how Lydia's gonna go stay with this family. And I think this again feels very like modern day where the parents are kind of deliberating, like, is it okay for her to go? And the mom's like, it's fine. I know this family, she's gonna be
Mhm.
great. And I think that maybe she gets involved with Mr. Wickham, and maybe that letter was to just say, like, "Hey, we're dating." I don't think that they slept together because I don't think that they did that then, but, like, maybe, I
Yeah,
don't know. Like,
yeah.
maybe kinda like what that letter was communicating, and I think the reason why that was so devastating was money-wise, her being attached to him is not going to benefit their family. If anything, it's gonna bring, like, shame to them because he also he has no money and she has no money.
Mm,
So, again, like, don't know what I'm talking about, but the plain way that I'm reconciling this is that somehow between their uncle and Mr. Darcy gave the 2 of them as a couple the money that they needed, and by getting married, she's now, like, she's okay, she's not gonna be scandalized,
okay.
and also they I don't know, just maybe having a wedding or having a sponsor or something sanction this wedding, like, made their union okay, and Mr.
Okay.
Darcy was instrumental in making that happen.
So it was the purpose was to eliminate scandal.
Yes.
Okay. Which was kind of Mr. Wickham's, I think, strategy that he knew that he was basically, like, not blackmailing Lydia, but almost, like,
I think
reverse
was kind
blackmailing
of.
himself or, like, getting her into the situation so that she didn't have any other choice, and he knows that she's very impressionable.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he almost is like, Let me get this girl on the hook because if we're just both 2 poor people who are dating, like, this is gonna be a problem for everybody, but someone will come in and get
Save
us
it.
the money
Yeah.
that we need." Kinda
Yeah.
like saving her honor, and then he got the money that
This
he
is why
wanted
Mr.
all
Wickham is worse than Mr.
access.
Willoughby.
Yeah.
He's very conniving.
More on Mr. Darcy, like, do you like him? Do you not like him?
The moments that I liked the most with him was when we finally see him in this different light, when he's at his own estate and he's, like, being really sweet with his sister, because it made me feel like, okay, this guy is, like, has some range and isn't, like, completely brooding and, like, mad all the time and isn't, like, holding so true to this disposition. I think he even says it, like, he is the type of person that kinda likes to keep to himself, like, he doesn't really being in these social situations, especially when he doesn't know anyone. It's almost like he's, like, a level of anxiety, and we kind of see him in this different light and him, like, starting to soften when Elizabeth is over, and we see him meet her aunt and uncle for the first time and is really sweet with them. So it's almost like he is able to be kind, but I enjoyed that contrast once we were able to get him in the second half of the movie. I think it's a preference thing. I think that Elizabeth is kind of that way, whether she's just less outward about it, and it kind of makes sense, like, why she would be into this guy that she can't really have and pretends that she doesn't want, because she likes a little bit of a challenge and she likes something that's a little bit different. But I don't know why Mr. Darcy is, like, the pedestal of yearning and the man that in literary fiction that we are, like, pining after. And my biggest issues with him are his clothing for this movie. And I know it was of the time, but the things that I would have, like, a good thing. And then it would be like Mr. Darcy's large hat, thumbs down. Mr. Darcy's riding boots, thumbs down. Mr. Darcy's very oversized pantsuit, thumbs down. Yeah, I don't know what the hype is. Is what I'm agreeing with you on. I think that's what you're saying.
You kind of bringing up this point that he's, maybe like a little bit of an introvert, and he does have a good heart, and those parts of him I
Yeah.
understand, but I think this idea and this pedestal that society has put him on as this literary heartthrob, it feels a little problematic to me
Yeah.
because it's almost like there's this grumpy guy and like, "Oh, but he can be sweet sometimes." And like, that I'm sorry, that's not good enough for me. That's very like letting guys get away with being jerks.
Yes. Completely agree with you. And I talk about this all the time, which is like still present in society, is that the term like boys will be boys and boys
Yeah.
are supposed to play hard to get and they're supposed to treat you like shit. And you will end up being attracted to that because that's what you can't have. And then once you have it, you're not going to feel, whole because it's like you were just chasing this like unattainable thing that then you get. And I think that we really in society completely allow for that to happen. Like it's really our own fault to like let men get a pass and treat women, I think, with less respect because of these like characters and ideas that we have in our head that it's like, well, this is just how it's supposed to be, which I think is kind of like more of the Mr. Wickham, right? It's like this man who isn't a good person, does not have good intentions, but draws you in with his charm and then kind of like leaves you high and dry when you don't give him what he wants. But his like affect, he's not playing hard to get because he's a sociopath.
Yeah.
So you don't really get if we were to almost like blend their two characters, that would have been like the perfect explanation of like how we portray like certain men in society who should do not treat women with respect and we give them a complete pass for it and then like put them on a pedestal.
The only silver lining in it is that he ends up with someone like Elizabeth. I don't
Yes.
feel like their relationship is unhealthy because I think that she can handle herself, and I think that they have a very balanced relationship, whereas, like, I think if he was in a relationship with someone like Jane, I think that that would end up being a bad situation because I don't think
Mhm.
that she could stand up to him,
Mhm.
and match him in the way that he I think that, like you said, I think that they both Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy need this level of fulfillment that they're only gonna find from people like one another.
Mhm.
Being with someone similar is, like, a good thing.
Yeah, and I was just going to say I think this is a rare moment because they always say you need to end up with someone who is very different for you so you balance each other out, but these are two sets of couples that I actually think work in movies where they need to be both fire and like both ice where they like come together and I don't know match each other.
When he proposed in the rain, were you like, "What? Where is this coming from?"
Yes, absolutely. I mean that's like one of but I think when I'm watching Regency films, the feelings that I and the critique that I give for all of their movies is this is just in a separate category because the whole thing is kind of ridiculous if you think about it, right? Like during this time, it was like you met a man and you'd had a dance and then you got married because there was so much on the line of like, well, if you don't get married, you're going to end up on the street. And this is an economic decision, not a love story. And if you get some love in it, great. So I think that like my standards of how I view that scene are kind of like acceptance with this is just how it was. Where if I were to watch like an original film that came out today and took place today, I would be like, this had no lead up. It was just like they met and then he confesses love. But yeah, they hardly had any interaction. They went to two balls together. they like yelled at each other. And then he follows her after church and is wanting her to say yes to his proposal.
Yeah, I think this is just more points for Mr. Knightley
Yeah.
and the Emma situation. Like when I think the reason I love that love story so much is because that made sense that they had this deep foundation,
Yeah.
and this is just like, what do you mean you're in love with me?
And they
Like,
had more, yeah, they hardly had many songs. They were writing each other letters. It was
yeah.
just, but again, I think he couldn't help himself that this is probably the first time he was ever in a situation where he met a woman who was like a little bit,
Mhm.
against the grain, and he kind of saw this other path of being with a woman who's not up to like his quote unquote expectations and like
Mhm.
not being able to work through his emotions. I think I would have been a really good like Regency therapist. It would have been
Who would be
like,
your first if you oh, this is also I think would be a great question
oh,
for the table of it could be from this movie, but really from any Jane Austen or any Regency story. Which couple do you think needs therapy the most?
probably these 2. Probably these 2. I could see them having a lot of issues that they're running into later in their marriage because they fell in love too fast and they didn't work through their issues. But I was gonna say I would have definitely picked like the gossiper in Sense and Sensibility.
Mrs. Jennings?
I would have picked Mrs. Jennings because she would have given me all the dirt on like everyone.
But doesn't that isn't that a breach in your
Well, it's
in
not
your
like I'm sharing
practice?
anyone. I mean, I
You just
just
need some foundational
she's sharing it
information.
with me and I'm gonna keep it to myself because I need some excitement.
I don't know, Laura. This is a good advertisement for your therapy agency.
I mean,
Step one, find the town
confidentiality.
gossip.
Find the town gossip, bring them on as your first, and then you'll be able to understand everyone else that comes into your practice.
I think that these two, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy, is a good answer. I think number two, Colonel Brandon and Marianne. I think Marianne's gonna be in that therapy office
Oh, yeah. She's,
weekly.
"What have I done? What have I done?"
All right,
Uh,
so bring this question to your table. Which
yes.
Regency couple, or it doesn't have to be a couple, it could just be an individual, would be in need of some good therapy?
Is there anything else for you of things you did not like?
I hesitate to say this because I feel like it just makes me look bad, but I am glad we have subtitles because I felt like a lot of the dialogue, I had a really hard time understanding what they were saying.
Yeah. It makes me feel really like I need to increase my IQ. That's what I'm saying
That's
because
exactly how I feel. I'm like, how is
I
it that I
feel
don't understand English being spoken by these like
yes.
award-winning
I
actors?
know, and I think that's why I've never been able to read these books because I my eyes just glaze over. And it's not because it's boring, it's just because we grew up in a time where we abbreviate everything and speak on social media sites, and we're just melting our brains and have completely gotten rid of the intellectual side of writing. So, maybe this is a challenge for us both to learn English.
Yes. I do feel compelled to read these books. I think in watching all of these movies, I'm interested, although I love especially with our last release of Emma, we've had a lot of people jumping into the comments of on our YouTube video, very kind people, kind of sharing some like tidbits about the book and how things differ. So if you're one of these people who are more well versed in these stories, come just share your thoughts and comments. I feel like Laura and I are just kind of like dipping our toes into this universe, and this is my favorite thing is to just kind of like talk about
Yeah.
stories and movies and hearing other people's thoughts. So if
Yeah,
you're
we
one of
want
those
the
people, thank
Regency,
you.
like, diehards to pick us apart. We want your point of view on Mr. Darcy and why we think that everyone's so obsessed with him.
Yeah, and I mean, and so far, I will just say, like, Regency people, you seem to be the best people because there's a lot that you can tear apart from these conversations because we clearly are like, we don't really know what we're talking about. And that's not the angle that people are taking at all. Not, not correcting us or,
Yeah.
shunning our opinions, but just kind of like sharing their thoughts and then talking about the books, which I really love and appreciate.
Should we talk about favorite scenes and favorite quotes?
Yes.
Okay.
Why don't you go first?
Okay. If I had to boil down my favorite scene, we haven't talked about the ball scenes at all. And I really love the scene where Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy are dancing and they decide to remove everyone from the room in the shot. And it's just the two of them. And it's this really weird creative decision because it's just this one moment and it doesn't match any other scenes throughout the movie. It's not like they do a callback later, but the entire lead up feels really human and recognizable to be in a room with all of these, maybe probably a lot of interesting people, new faces to meet, but you're only focused the whole night on seeing that one person that you're looking forward to going to the party and running into them. And maybe you just give each other a quick glance. But the fact that he asks her to dance and she's like, oh my gosh, Charlotte, what have I just agreed to? And then they just have this really sweet dance and they're also bickering kind of while they're doing it. But I think I really love that scene where they remove everyone from the room and it's just the two of them. And I think that's how their whole night kind of felt. It's like the minute they meet, everyone else is going to disappear. And we haven't really talked about the ball scenes, but like the first, I like that they included two. I like that they included that's how they met and how it's this big party and the room kind of stops when they enter and it's like the people who aren't from here but are quote unquote better than us. There's like a lot of movement and a lot of kind of what you were saying side discussions within a very crowded and loud room. And then similarly with like the second ball, the camera work of like moving in between the rooms and seeing these like, sometimes like funny things that are going on, like the sisters Mary, right?
The middle sister,
Middle
yeah.
sister, she gets like booed off the piano or she gets booted off. And there's kind of like a line of people who want to go and they're not to jump out to food, but then you have Mrs. Bennet like eating pudding and you have, Jane and Mr. Bingley's character. But the big moment is when Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy dance. And it's just really beautiful. And then some two like runner up scenes. I really loved when she goes to his estate and they're in the statue head room. And again, just another kind of weird scene. And I think the music that they paired with that moment is really important. And it just kind of makes you feel exactly what she's feeling. But to show us this really tender moment of giving us a glimpse into her heart of, wow, I actually really do love this man. And I'm staring at a statue head of him and I'm caressing it. And kind of a similar approach to the ball where she's like, I know he's not here, or I don't think he's here. And I am saying that I hope that he's not here, but she hopes that he's there. And I think that's like the most pure form of yearning that you could portray in a book or a movie.
Wow. Have you been to this sculpture garden in the Met recently?
No, not in a while. I actually was thinking the other day, I was like, spring is coming. I'm gonna go to the Met. When I have a day off, I'm gonna go into the city and I'm gonna do like a full Met day at some point.
All right, because I have been recently in the last couple of years, I just went on a day trip by myself and I had so many great memories of when I went in college, like with other art students, and we sat and we brought our sketchbooks and we drew pictures of the
Mhm.
sculptures in the sculpture gardens. There are a couple of them. And so I kind of, me, I'm so nostalgic. I tried to kind of recreate that experience when I went by myself and I brought a sketchbook and the light in well, both of the sculpture gardens, but one of them specifically, I'll put a picture up on the YouTube version. There's just something about it that's just like it's so otherworldly. It's just like golden and the way that it bounces off of, the white marble. When I watched the scene, I was just like, I want to go to the Met so bad. And even though this scene, the light is a little bit more cold, it doesn't really seem like there are windows in this room in at Pemberley, but you have that same sense of like reverence that you feel when you're looking at art like that that's just so gorgeous and almost like especially like now in the 2020s, it's the kind of art that I almost can't comprehend that another human created it. It's that level of gorgeousness. So I love that both just experiencing that scene by watching the movie, but then kind of also pairing it with this recent memory that I had. It was doing the movie magic thing that I love so much, which is just like connecting what's on the screen to what's in real life.
Yeah. Ah, that also just makes me wanna, like, travel to so many museums over the world and just go to their sculpture rooms. So, favorite quotes, I didn't write down as many again because I couldn't understand what they were saying, but I have to give it to my boy, Mr. Bennet, which is the scene where we didn't talk about Mr. Collins at all. He's another person I didn't like, but I did like his house. So, Mr. Bennet says to Elizabeth, "Your mother will never see you again if you don't marry Mr. Collins." And he said, "And you will never see me again if you do." And I just, oh
Obsessed.
my gosh. I'm like, can I get that posted on my wall? Or if I have a daughter someday, I'm like, Dom, you're gonna watch this movie before our daughter dates anyone, and you're gonna keep this quote back pocket just in case I lose my way.
Oh, I loved that so much. And it was so I don't want to say it was unexpected of his character, but it is, you see that he's resigned to the circumstances of what their life is. And it's just I don't think that we were expecting him to say that.
And I also just love the entire setting that she very dramatically, like, she denies the proposal, she runs out of the house, the mom is chasing her and screaming, and it's like, "You're so, like, hard-headed," and then that he also follows, and they have this very 3 characters who are in completely different mindsets, and then they leave us with that in the English countryside. And I love this line that's talking about Mr. Darcy, and I think maybe Elizabeth's aunt says it, but she says there's something pleasant about his mouth when he speaks, and I just
Oh, love a
love
detail.
writing. Love that writing. And I don't understand the hype of Mr. Darcy, but I do understand the hype of the line, "You have bewitched my body and soul." I mean,
That's all Jane Austen. I'm not
yeah,
gonna even give
not give it to
I'm
Mr.
not giving
Darcy.
Mr. I'm not
Yeah.
attributing that to Mr. Darcy. He hasn't
Yes.
earned it yet.
Alright, what about you?
Okay, so similarly, my I think that my favorite serious scene was the scene between Elizabeth and her dad at the end
Mhm.
in his office. And I don't know that there was anything specific in the scene, like a line exchange or anything that stood out to me, but I just think that this concept alone that he respects his daughters so much that this conversation was even taking place, I think is what was so beautiful to me. And just knowing how important it was for him to understand that she really is truly in love with Mr. Darcy, that this wasn't just, a marriage of
Mhm.
convenience. I think he even said something like I get that he's rich, but like, don't you hate him? And I think that all of us in our family are lucky enough to have a great relationship with our dad, and we have had conversations like this. I don't feel like conversations like this have been only between us and mom. I feel like it's been pretty equal
Mhm.
with both our parents. So once again, I know I'm like kind of like putting my own background over this, but
There's a lot of, like, father-daughter moments in this movie that are really heartwarming and I think make it against the grain of just like a typical romantic drama. And I think that was like the moment that it kind of came together for me to end with that.
Of all the scenes, that was one of the ones that have really stuck with me from
Yeah.
watching it before. And then comedically, this is a little bit of a sequence, but the scene toward the end, it's right before Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy show up at the house, and we're just seeing the girls laying around. We're seeing the mom laying on the couch. They're just having a casual afternoon, and then one of them, gets word that they're approaching the house and they have to scurry to make it look like they're these, more proper ladies. And
Mhm.
I love the scene where the two guys come into the room and they've completely transformed. And I love the scene that follows that too of this is another one of those similar to like Laura, you were saying they don't really do a callback to this or they don't repeat this shot, but they have this scene where Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy are kind of like standing outside their house. This is after they've like been in and then go out and they're kind of like rehearsing what, the Mr. Bingley's proposal. And it's just a cute scene that you wouldn't expect from two guys from this era.
I know. Oh, it was such a sweet moment. I also back to the scene where they're all like getting ready
Yeah.
before he comes over. I also like that the opposition of like what they showed when they first come over to the house and they're all like just the shot of all the daughters like standing in different places like they're a painting. And I like that they made the decision to like show the chaos of like what it needs to be done to get there versus like what they're just showing of how they're just casually hanging out.
I was laughing even from just seeing the casualness of them hanging out. This is another just like not what I'm expecting from a Regency movie. So
Yeah,
I love that they
I
took it in
agree.
that direction. All right, favorite lines. The first, I mean, we have barely talked about Mr. Collins at all, but another we have another spectacular performance from Tom Hollander. You can catch him in our review of About Time from earlier this year. He was just as spectacular in this, if not better, kind of like thinking about his character in About Time and then thinking about his character in
Yeah.
this. So my favorite quote comes from him, and I remember when I saw this in the movies, cackling out loud. Like I couldn't help myself, but he says, "What a superbly featured home and what excellent boiled potatoes."
I'm gonna start saying that to Tom.
His disposition of being so serious. This guy like does not like humor does not
No.
penetrate him, like he doesn't understand it. And just being so earnest. I think, being earnest is a characteristic that I just make always makes me laugh in stories. And we're not supposed to like him, but I definitely don't hate him.
Yeah. That's a perfect description of him. That's why we saved him for this moment. I loved watching him, like, trying to dance with her. And he says something along the lines of, like, well, I'm very, like, well known to be a good dancer. Like, he's really trying to play it up. And I thought the proposal scene was great. And I also love spending time with him and Charlotte at their beautiful home.
Yeah.
Like, how do I
I
get an
love
invite
Charlotte.
there? Charlotte actually has a very viral quote, or really Jane Austen, that she says, people put in the background of a lot of Instagram videos of, I have no prospects, no money.
Oh,
She's
poor
like, don't you dare
Charlotte.
judge me.
She's lovely.
She is lovely.
I'm
And
sorry that she's stuck in this time period. All right. Well, speaking of Charlotte, this is a line that Elizabeth says to Charlotte at the ball. And this is right before your favorite scene, Laura, the
mm,
dance scene. She said, "Did I just agree to dance with Mr. Darcy?" And then she said, "It would be most convenient since I have sworn to loathe him for all eternity." And then my last favorite line is just when Jane and Elizabeth are both at the Bingleys. And I love that they're kind of like Jane is there, and then Elizabeth has to go out there. And then whoever the footman or whoever is announcing says, It's a Mrs. Bennet and Miss Bennet and Miss Bennet and Miss Bennet. And I just love that this whole family has to like show up at their
You
house.
know? Oh my gosh, it was so fun. I love the Footman.
Oh wait, can I just say one more social media thing
Please.
that I have seen? During the pandemic, we were kind of like branding everything, but one of the things was like kind of doing hot girl walks.
Mhm.
Something that I've seen on social media is people doing Elizabeth Bennet walks, getting outdoors and getting in touch with nature. But uh, that always makes me laugh, just like how much she's obsessed with walking and how they kind of like
Yeah.
call her out
Right.
on it. They're like, yeah,
Yeah.
we know you like to walk.
Very main character energy, reading while walking in a prairie.
Yes.
All right, well, what about food moments? Lots of breakfast scenes. Uh,
Yes.
I think I had it down that a lot of it was happening too quickly that I didn't have time to, like, digest everything that was on the table, but I'll let you go first.
Well, I didn't really feel like this movie was so different than the other ones. Like I didn't pick up on anything notable, but I will say that we've had this common thread of this what we call like the puffy bread. This
Yeah.
bread that's very voluminous, and I don't know if this is before they had like, they weren't really making sandwiches, so maybe
Mm.
we're used to seeing like a sandwich
I
sized
feel like
loaf.
their bread back then was so bad. I just
It's
know it
like
was
stale and like no
yeah,
salt.
I just think it was, like, tasteless.
Oh,
The
that
only
makes me
thing that was
sad.
probably good for was, like, sop up, like, meat juice.
Yeah. Yeah, but I felt like we just saw more of the same thing. Tea, meats, fruit on platters. I did see a confirmed sighting of champagne at the
Oh,
ball. Someone
okay,
had it on a platter. When I saw it, I thought, and for the new
okay.
people, champagne theory is our theory that champagne appears in every film. However, our last 2 Jane Austen films we did not have confirmed sightings, so
We know that it was there, though.
we looked up the history of champagne. It should have been there if it wasn't. Just one more question, because you mentioned the mom going around the ball and you thought that she had pudding. I thought it was Jello. I didn't know what that was, but w
I don't
what was the
know.
deal with that?
It looked like a dessert to me,
Okay.
and I liked the little cup that it was in, but
Mhm.
it's reminding me that I still have to make you your tahini fudge sundae when you come
Yes, you
visit
do.
me. I'm very excited.
I'm ready for it. I'm waiting.
I'm ready now. Mrs. Bennet had some interesting food moments, like when she cracks an egg into her milk. I could have done without that.
Oh, I
Um,
forgot about that.
I did like the big breakfast scenes. I was a little concerned that they had like a full animal at dinner instead of just like a side of bacon. Maybe bacon wasn't a big thing during that. They weren't able to cure or cut it down small, but it did make me just want to have like biscuits with jam and tea, like a really big breakfast spread.
Like a hotel breakfast.
Mm, I agree. I think the meals are have a lot of crossover in these movies that we've been covering.
Yeah, I felt like Emma had an opportunity to kinda do something different because it was such a stylized movie,
Right.
and they didn't really. I mean, they just kinda, like, made everything look a little bit more opulent, but
Mhm.
maybe this is idea jar. If we ever make a Regency film, we're gonna do something different with the food. I don't know what, but we're
I
gonna do
think it's
something
just
different.
hard because there are always these big platters, so how do you make it look real like, the food styling is probably so difficult on these types of meals. Was there any sexy apple eating in this movie? The answer is no.
Well, we see Elizabeth eating an apple when she's with her aunt and uncle in front of that really massive tree. I don't know if
I
we see
like
her biting into it, but it's like a half-eaten apple in her hand.
yeah. I really wanted to know what they were eating. I know that they were drinking beer, but I wanted to know what they ate at the, Rose and Crown pub. I wanted to be there. That seemed like a good time.
Maybe like a pie, a
Mm.
shepherd's pie or a chicken pot pie.
Where should we have our dinner party? Speaking of settings, food settings. Should we do it at the Bennet household? Should we do it at the Mr. Darcy estate? We have a lot of options.
Maybe we should do it at the pub.
Should we do a dinner out?
Yeah, let's go out
What
to
are people
dinner.
ordering? Let's go out for dinner. Um, okay, we'll do 2 and 2. We haven't talked a lot about Mr. Collins, so you're gonna have Mr. Collins and Kitty, because we haven't really talked about Kitty. I think that I disliked Lydia and Kitty so much because it's probably how I was when I was their age. But
You
they
were not.
I could have done without the giggling all movie.
We didn't really talk about either of these two ladies, so we'll bring them both. I'm going to give you both the sisters of our two leading men, Georgiana Darcy, Mr. Darcy's sister, and Caroline Bingley, Mr. Bingley's sister.
Oh, this is gonna be a good one. And this is
This will
also
be
Mr. Collins'
spicy.
dream. He's surrounded by
All these ladies.
young single women. Okay, I can start. I think that Georgiana, she's not drinking. She gets whatever like the pub soda is. Did they have soda at this time? I'm gonna assume that they did, but I'm picturing it as like a root beer, but like it's not very sweet. It's more of like it's not tasting good. But
Should
that's
we create like what a Shirley Temple would be from this era?
yeah.
I mean,
I don't know
maybe you
why I
just
was
said it.
picturing
Maybe it's root
beer.
beer.
Maybe it's like root beer with like
An
a
egg.
a cherry, like a soaked cherry, you know what I mean? So
Okay.
it's
Yeah. Oh,
soaked
yeah,
in,
that
like,
could be good.
sugar or something, so it's popped in there. So it adds a little bit of sugar. And I think for dinner, like, I don't know why I just picture her eating, like, sweets. Like, I think she just wants, like, a sugary I think maybe because she's, like, in my mind, like a little girl, like, I feel like she wants, like, everything that's, like, sweet. So, I could picture her ordering, like, a pudding. Like, she wants, like, a pudding and a soda, and I think she's just kind of, like is very sweet, like, she would never say that she wouldn't wanna be surrounded by these people, but, like, she's the only one that's kind of the odd man out. I think that Miss Bringley definitely has whatever the version, of sanitary wipes were at this time. Like, she is cleaning off the seat, she is, like, disgusted by this setting. She would never step foot in this place. Like, there's men spilling beer on her satin, and she's very upset. Like, she has nowhere to put her hat down. Her footmen did not come with her on the party or this outing. I think she asks if, like, whatever their version of filtered water, like a Voss water would be, like, do you carry bottled like alpine water here, and they obviously don't have that there. They don't even serve water. I think that she ends up just being like, fine, I'll just have a cup of tea because I know you guys can do that. Anyone can do it, and the water will be boiled. She's very concerned about like having too many calories. So she asks if they have like a side salad, but they don't really have like great produce at this pub because it's more of like a meat and potatoes place. So she gets kind of like a spring mix salad and her Voss or her non-Voss water, she'll have her cup of tea.
I love imagining her just in a pub in general. All right. I'm gonna start with Kitty. I think that she in their households, like I could see her parents letting her drink cider, even though she's
Mhm.
like kind of underage. And I think, they don't really have IDs at this point in history. So I think that when she goes to the Rose and Crown, she could just kind of order whatever she wants. But
She's
I think
giggling,
that she gets it anyway. I think that she
yeah.
orders cider, and I think that she maybe overdoes it, like maybe has one too many throughout the course of this meal. And I think that she orders fish and chips because she really likes French
Mhm.
fries. She mostly just wants the French fries, and she just
Okay.
kind of picks at the fried fish. I don't know if they had ketchup yet, but I think that she is a ketchup girl. Actually,
Mhm.
I could see her being like, "I want ketchup and I want ranch dressing."
I want, like, a shepherd's pie right now.
All right, well, that's kind of what I was thinking. I know we mentioned this already, but I think that Mr. Collins raves about how he went to Lady Catherine's once for dinner and that their cook makes the most marvelous shepherd's pie. And he's hopeful that this pub may be able to recreate it. And I think that when he's ordering, he makes a big point of listing all of the ingredients, even though the chef is like, you're just gonna get what you're gonna get." And I think when it arrives, it's not perfect, but he doesn't seem like someone who would make a stink in a situation like this. I think that he just eats it and again talks about just uses it as another example of how he can talk about his connection with
Mhm.
Lady Catherine. And I think he also drinks, red wine out of a
Oh.
pewter cup.
I feel like he asked if they have a good decanter. He's like,
Yes,
"I like to decant my wine before."
good call.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe we didn't even talk about Dame Judi Dench because we should just add her to this party. And she would also probably bring like a sheet to put down. But oh, she absolutely understood this role. She nailed it.
Yes. What a presence. I
Oh,
was scared of her. I
I
was
was
if I
very
had watched this
when
as a
she
kid,
shows
I
up.
would have nightmares about her.
I know. I know. What an aunt to have. Wow. Absolutely amazing. That was another point, not to go back, but I did like the decision making, which is like very prevalent in a lot of movies, but like that Mr. Darcy is like everywhere. Like he is
Connected
some
with everyone, you mean? Like
you can't get away from him. And she
yeah.
even shows up at his house. But
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Mhm.
Not that he's connected to everyone, but that
but,
no matter
but
where she
both.
goes, he happens to be in town when
Yeah.
she wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Shows up at the Rose and Crown. That's a good date night.
that is a good date. I liked that. I liked this little jaunt that, like, Elizabeth got to hang out with her aunt and uncle. It felt like
Yeah.
that was, like, a really great little trip that they had.
Oh my
Like,
god, that was so fun. I
they
wanna
went
go
to
on a trip.
Pemberley, they
I
hung
wanna go
out
on a
with Mr.
trip with,
Darcy.
like yeah, I wanna go on a trip with Aunt Sally and Uncle Joe, like,
Yeah.
right now. Like, come on, guys. Okay, this or that. Pick a romantic moment or gesture. The hand graze of Mr. Darcy as Elizabeth's getting into the carriage, or Mr. Darcy professing his love to Lizzie in torrential downpour after church.
You know, I love the rain scene. I love rain and I love
Mhm.
rain scenes, but I think I have to go with the hand graze. I love a little a hand. I love a hand moment.
Yes.
And I love that that was just really subtle and sweet and that's all we needed.
And I was looking it up because I never when I used to see that clip, I was like, "What's the this is sweet, and it's kind of, like, yearning, but what's the big deal?" And apparently it was, like, very, like, taboo of the time that was not, like, a gesture that you give. It's, like, supposed to be saying, like, "I am interested in you," but it's not something that was, like, very accepted. All our Regency folks can give us a proper explanation.
Well, if that's true, then that makes me
Even
like
better.
my choice even better. Yeah. But it's a little forbidden too.
Okay, who would you rather be forced to marry, Mr. Collins or Mr. Wickham? I think I know your answer after.
To your point, we don't get to see Mr. Wickham's house. It seems like they may be, like, out on the road because he's
Yeah.
still in the army. Ah, he's really good looking, though.
I mean, in a time where everyone marries for money, like at least pick Mr. Collins' house. Do you see that house?
That's true. He has a
I
nicer
just
house.
I
I don't know
think
if that's a reason to marry someone, but
my image of Mr. Wickham is that he like pisses away all his money on gambling and then they like
yeah.
can't pay for electricity and they're like eating really bad like stew. So like his good looks go out the window. So
Okay,
that's
you
just
convince me. You convince me. Let's do Mr. Collins.
they're gonna be like him and Liddy are gonna be in 10 years drunk at the Rose and
Yeah.
Crown every night,
Yes.
like trying to
But
steal
not
food off
together.
people's plates. Yes, not together. I like this spinoff. Okay, speaking of the Rose and Crown, okay, so pick a dinner or a breakfast setting. The Rose and Crown pub for a pint or the breakfast table at the Bennet household with like all of the Bennets.
I gotta go with the breakfast table.
So you are hosting your own ball. Would you rather have it at the Mr. Bringley's country home or the Darcy estate.
I think the Darcy estate.
Yeah.
There's more places to decorate, and it feels a little grander.
You could have the cocktail hour in the statues room.
That's exactly what I was thinking. That would be perfect. Set up a
Little.
little bar in there. All right. Would you rather take an Elizabeth Bennet walk around the inside of Pemberley or the outside? And this is where Mr. Darcy lives.
I think the outside, because I think when I'm inside, I kind of just want to like sit in the parlor and have a cocktail or sit at like a big dinner table. I want to be sitting in rooms and enjoying, and I want to be grazing outside.
All right. Would you rather be woken in the middle of the night by Lady Catherine to accuse you of being engaged to her nephew, or overhear Mr. Darcy say rude things about you at the ball?
I think over here, Mr. Darcy, because then we would just get in a little bit of like a flirty fight. Because without that moment, I don't think that they would have become what they were.
But this is why I'm not an Elizabeth, because if I overheard Mr. Darcy say anything bad about me, I'd be like, I'm never
Oh
going to
boy.
be around this person again.
I just feel like I would have been smart enough to know that he didn't actually mean it. I was like, he doesn't
Okay,
know.
that's fair. Would you rather have to take a turn around the room with Caroline Bingley or go into town and watch the militia parade with Lydia and Kitty?
Oh my God. Absolutely, Caroline. Get me away from Kitty and Lydia. You just going into town, having to travel with them into town, let alone spend a day with them that's easiest decision I made all day.
And last one, best Mr. Darcy scene, the I'm in love with you in the rain scene or the early morning mist proposal at the end?
Okay, so I have some notes.
Okay.
I love a rain scene and I like love the romantic, just anything about rain I think is romantic. My fear is, and I think that this is PTSD about learning about Kate Winslet. I think that rain scene, I think it's cold and like she doesn't have a jacket, which concerns me. But the mist scene, I also am like, it's probably cold. It's in the morning. So I think I have to go with the mist because at least you're not wet and cold. You're just like damp and cold. And I think like the morning light really is beautiful.
It was beautiful and peaceful, but I just have to say this was the only part of the movie that I had this thought, but the scene with Mr. Darcy like trudging toward her with his like
His
shirt
boots.
open and his boots, it just was like a little it wasn't ironic. It felt like they were trying to be serious and I was like, you're not serious, right? That like this is happening, but
I think it would have been sweeter if they both just saw each other in the prairie. They had this very quiet moment and we're kind of like, oh, okay, they're going to end up
or
together.
maybe, like, wearing something else. I was trying to, like, make it work. I was like, "Okay, maybe this is, like, what he wears to bed and he's coming out here in his pajamas," but, like, I
His
don't know. It was
boots.
just a little, like, he wouldn't wear that.
No.
You know, he wouldn't try to be, like, looking like the guy on a front of a romance novel.
I
That's
can't
just
take
not his
it. I
vibe.
could not take the riding boots. That was my last straw with him. First the oversized top hat was strike number 1. Then there's just like you don't have a good tailor during that time period. Why is everything oversized? And then the riding boots were like a hard no. Because there was like a riding boot era where I used to wear boots and they were not a good look.
Get it, Taylor. I love it.
Yeah. Get a tailor. And that's the end of our episode. Okay. Well, we are going to cap off our Regency season with the coverage of the movie that kind of started the idea to even do this season to begin with. So next week, we're going to be covering Wuthering Heights. We're going to do a little bit different of a format. We're going to do more of because Michelle and I both saw this in the theater, which is, I think, a first time on the podcast. And I personally didn't get to take notes in the dark. So I think we're going to do a little bit, again, a different format where it's a shorter style episode and we're going to talk
More
a little.
casual.
So if you saw the movie, if you haven't seen the movie yet, we would love for you to listen in and finish this lovely spring, pre-spring season with us.
Can't wait. We'll see you then.